The chase for Kawhi, no laughing matter, as the top guy on the board with seemingly a three-card money, if you will, in play. Two at the forefront of that. Remember, the max guys to go with them not really there, so you figure maybe Lakers or Raptors, but Clippers, when you've got Doc and the logo in a meeting, anybody can get swayed to do almost anything in this game, I'm sure. But Wes, let's start with, from a finances standpoint, if he ends up going to the Lakers, because this is really one of the more fascinating questions, can you explain to Rex and I and everybody listening, what feasibly can they do beyond that to fill a roster that can go and win a championship?
So they have, one max slot for 79 years or just near it, enough to get the deal done. $32 million in change to give Kawhi Leonard 32.7, which is his max. So they got to figure out, on the most likely Kawhi gives a little bit back to get Kawhi done. And then they have the room team exception, which is a 2-year deal that starts at $4.7 million. That's why you're hearing all these, Garrett Temple, 2 years, 10. That's a room team exception deal. Once you spend all your cap room, you're allowed to use your room team exception. And then you fill out the rest of your roster with minimum contracts or trades, but the Lakers don't really have anyone else to trade because they've traded everybody. Unless they move Kuzma, which they're certainly not going to do. So ultimately, this just comes down to that $32 million if it goes to Kawhi, the room team exception, and minimums. If not Kawhi, then they can split the $32 million up in a number of ways.
So here's the thing, Rex, is Kawhi better going back to Toronto, take the 1 year, right, do the one and get back in the same scenario, run it back one more time, because it's not going to be a long-term situation, and come back out to the marketplace, maybe where you can bring a second guy, or go to the Lakers where very likely you're looking at J.R. Smith or Jeff Green and Melo and a lot of LeBron's old faithful guys that the Cavs had to do when Griffith, the same kind of a thing. What's the best spot for Kawhi, do you think, next year?
You're going to hate this answer, but I think I'm going to give you two of them. I like him going back to Toronto. I really do. Just as a basketball purist, I like him going back, and I love what Masai has done there, what Nick Nurse did this season. It was just fantastic. I mean, it's expanded our game, so I like that. I've been suspecting that Kawhi is going to be a Clipper for 2 years now. I think we started hearing that a couple years ago in San Antonio, that it was a foregone conclusion. He's going to the Clippers. I think it's nothing. I think there's nothing there with the Lakers. We got to think about this. Just yesterday, somebody reported that Kawhi and KD were actually teaming up to go to the Knicks. Somebody made that up, right? Because that was floating around there. Some of this stuff isn't real. I'm not sure that the Lakers thing, I'm sure they can get a meeting with Kawhi. I'm not sure he can go there, though.
Well, as we just said, look, Toronto for a year, get back out there, option, right? One more, run it back. You've got the Lakers. The Clippers, though, if he goes, now look, he proved with Toronto, you don't have to have a ton of big names. The interesting thing is, if you can put the Lakers and Clippers together, they're ready, because one has stars and the other's got all the supporting, right, gel pieces you need. If you had, like, the Lippers playing, you'd be all ready to go. See how it is on set, Wes? More fun than adding up all this stuff. If you're sitting there and you're the Clippers, feasibly and financially, we know they have that space.
Yep.
What can they sell Kawhi? You've been in those rooms. You know what those guys. What are they selling other than what they're about in culture, which is high, the logo and Doc? What can they sell him they can do to put around him a team good enough to beat the Lakers and others in the West?
Well, first they're going to say, look, we have built a team with depth, and we can add a player like you, retain Pat Beverly, or we maybe have other options. We're going to potentially make moves down the line. We have pieces to trade for other pieces, and we have draft picks. We have all of our own picks going forward in the future. We have a future Philly first. We have that Miami 2021 first that we don't know where it's going to play out with Jimmy Butler going back now to Miami. So we got to think that pick might not be as good as we all thought it was that the Clippers currently hold. But they're going to say we're good now. We can add you, and we're going to be good in the future. And on top of that, we've drafted well and we've developed well. This is almost the pitch that Masai has been making to Kawhi all year. In a very similar way, Toronto and the Clippers are similar models. The Clippers just happen to be in LA.
And just to follow on the two caveats: one, the Gallows deal, right, which they could use to try and free up more.
Yes.
And then the other part is almost like the reverse of where they were in the Blake situation, right? Or Tobias, where they could play with Kawhi, say, hey, look, we got enough to get you in the mix. and then still have room, right, to add an expiring contract in a trade.
Yeah, that's why at this point, this is why timing is so important. And Rick, you know this. As players start to come off the board, and we've seen more players come off the board in a first day of free agency than ever before. And as players come off the board, you have fewer options to spend the rest of your money. So it's most likely that they're going to keep Gallinari because he was an important piece, had a fantastic year. But you're right. He allows in a big expiring contract next year at the trade deadline. Maybe a Bradley Beal's potentially in play. They have young pieces. The Clippers have a way to be good now. They have flexibility with future draft picks in the future, and they have the contracts needed to be building blocks of trade in both the short term and the long term. So the Clippers have done just a fantastic job, and that's why I believe they have a real shot to get this thing done. It just so happens that Anthony Davis joins up with LeBron and the Lakers, but I don't know which way this is going to go because I think Toronto's got a great shot too.
You know, and I think you make a good point. I think that the pitch to Kawhi is, look, right now, KD's out. LeBron ended the season not like LeBron normally has. You're the best player in the game right now. All due respect to James Harden and Giannis, you're the best player in the game. We add you, we really have something.
I remember this. If Kawhi goes to the Lakers, D'Angelo doesn't. Who's playing the point for the Lakers, right? You know who's playing it for the Knicks? Not Kyrie. Not Kemba.
Oh.
Not D'Angelo Russell. Scary Terry was.
If the Miami Heat take a player in sign and trade, which they are in Jimmy Butler, they are bound by that number. They cannot go above it, and they got to sign 14 players. So Miami has to get under that number to make all this work, and that's why we're seeing all these moves. But this is the way it works. When you're sitting in that room, things are flying around. You think you may have a deal. You may agree to a deal. Somehow there's a miscommunication. You got to find another way to get it done. And the Miami Heat have Andy Ellisberg running all of this for them, who is known across the league and respected as the truly best cap guy there is. And it's no surprise that they've found multiple kind of versions to get this deal done.
And again, dominoes, which we talked about before. For Clipper fans who are watching, this is important to you. Why? Obviously, waste limber chance Kawhi comes to you now. So you're thinking, okay, maybe we hold fort with the team we had, see what happens. Well, Pat Bev is a big part of that. You'd have more money to be the highest bidder there. But Dallas was a team he talked to today, and there seemed to be some mutual interest. Dragic would have taken that out, but now he's out. So Pat Bev still in play for Dallas. And the Mavericks obviously moving forward. The big news was the Porzingis thing, which officially came down today. Dwight Powell, underrated player, as they start to, with Rick Carlisle, now build this next version of the Mavericks moving forward, Rex.
Yeah, you know, I kind of like that. I like matching point guards that way. You know, Dragic, that would have been fascinating to see him there. It would have been an all-Euro team for Nelly, which he probably would have loved. But I think Pat Bev going there does make some sense. This is a team that's very interesting. Of course, you have to wait and see how Porzingis comes back and when he comes back and how healthy he is. But a fascinating team. Doncic, I like what they can do. It will really be interesting to see if they can pull a point guard out of this thing.
You know, you talk about guards, and the guard that I don't think we're talking about enough, and I know, because sometimes you got to make sure, and this is how apparently leadership works, that you go and you give some love, like the running back helps the offensive line. The man who's in all of our ears, who is running the show right now, would be very happy that we remind you that the Pistons have been in play, not just because Isaiah Thomas has been on this show, but the Derrick Rose move was a really nice move, a cool move, because I think it's great to see that story that developed. Yeah. But he can help them. Now, look, Ish Smith has outplayed Reggie for, I don't want to talk out of turn, a lot of portions of the last couple of years at times. Derrick Rose going to probably get the chance to play a lot of minutes. How about that mix with Griffin and Drummond and what they have there, Derrick Rose with the Pistons for 2 years?
Well, if Derrick Rose can continue and build on what he did in Minnesota last year, where he shot 37% from three, looked like the player that we saw as an MVP, you know, so what seems like so long ago. I mean, that 50-point game and the emotional breakdown in, you know, the Target Center or whatever they still are calling the arena there up in Minnesota. it was a great year for him, and he reunites with Arn Tellem, his old agent there, kind of leading the Pistons. I think this is going to be a terrific fit for the Pistons, and without question, you're going to see a lot of Derrick Rose because there's been conversations around the league about what happens with Reggie Jackson. The Pistons haven't been able to figure that out, but I would bet down the road we see a little bit of a changing of the guard. Derrick Rose kind of as the lead guard, and Reggie trying to find another team.
Again, Pistons not in an easy spot. Contracts, maybe you'd like to move and switch around that they couldn't. One of the contracts that we knew was going to move in the offseason was Mike Conley, not because he didn't play great last year, speaking of great stories. But there was a lot of conversation that maybe he had been moved to Utah. There was a deal that was done. We're going back to the deadline that he didn't want to go there. He wanted to go back east, and then people thought home to Indiana. And here he ends up with the Jazz. And I think the most underrated maybe move of the day is that Bogdanovich deal, who was so good for Indiana last year. How about in that